He crumpled the divorce papers into a ball and threw them at her face. "Sign it, you worthless waste of 3 years." Caroline didn't flinch. She picked up the papers from the floor, smoothed them carefully, and signed her name with a pen that cost more than his car. He laughed. He actually laughed. He didn't know that pen was a gift from the board of directors of Whitmore Investment Group. He didn't know the quiet woman he just humiliated controlled $50 billion. He didn't know that signature wasn't her surrender. It was his death sentence. If you want to see how this satisfies revenge unfolds, subscribe to my channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the conference room on the 32nd floor. Derek Sullivan checked his Rolex for the third time in 2 minutes. "Can we speed this up? I have a lunch reservation at Nobu." His lawyer, a thin man named Patterson with a cheap haircut and expensive ambitions, slid the documents across the table. "Mrs. Sullivan, the terms are quite generous. Your husband is allowing you to keep the Honda Civic. He's also releasing you from any liability regarding Sullivan Tech's outstanding debts." Caroline sat perfectly still. Her cardigan had a small hole near the left cuff. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup. No jewelry except a thin wedding band she'd stopped wearing 3 months ago. She looked like exactly what Derek had told everyone she was. A nobody he'd rescued from a coffee shop. "Generous," she repeated quietly. Derek slammed his palm on the table. "Don't start with the victim routine, Carrie. We both know this marriage was a mistake. You contributed nothing. Zero. I built Sullivan Tech from the ground up while you sat at home baking cookies and reading novels." Caroline looked at him. Really looked at him. 3 years ago, she had fallen in love with his confidence, his ambition, his certainty that he would change the world. She had wanted to believe that someone could love her without knowing about the money, without knowing about the Whitmore name. She had been wrong. "You built Sullivan Tech," she said slowly. "From the ground up." "Damn right I did. Who paid for the servers the first year when you couldn't make payroll?" Derek's eye twitched. "That was an anonymous investor who believed in my vision." "Who introduced you to Marcus Chen at the Venture Capital Conference in Boston?" "Coincidence. He happened to sit next to me at the bar." "Who convinced your landlord not to evict the company when you were 4 months behind on rent?" Derek stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. "What are you implying?" Caroline didn't answer. She reached into her worn leather bag and pulled out a pen. It was black lacquer with gold trim. Simple. Elegant. Unremarkable unless you knew what to look for. Derek didn't know. The double eagle crest on the cap was given only to board members of Whitmore Investment Group. There were exactly 7 of these pens in existence. "I'm not implying anything, Derek." She uncapped the pen. "I'm signing your papers." The nib touched the paper. Caroline Whitmore Sullivan. She signed it slowly, deliberately, with the same careful precision she used when approving billion-dollar acquisitions. Derek snatched the document before she could change her mind. "Finally, Patterson, file this today. I want the divorce finalized by Friday." The conference room door opened without a knock. Megan Price walked in, wearing a red dress that was too tight for a Tuesday morning. Her blonde hair was freshly styled. Her lips were the color of fresh blood. "Is it done, baby?" She draped herself over Derek's shoulder, leaving a lipstick smear on his suit jacket. She didn't acknowledge Caroline, didn't even glance in her direction. Derek kissed her cheek. "It's done. The dead weight has been officially cut loose." Megan giggled. Caroline began gathering her things. The worn leather bag, a paperback novel she'd been reading, a water bottle from a gas station. "Wait." Derek reached into his wallet. He pulled out a crumpled bill and tossed it onto the table. "For the cab. Don't say I never gave you anything." It was $10. $10 for 3 years of marriage. 3 years of cooking his meals. 3 years of listening to his complaints. 3 years of loving the man who had never once asked about her dreams, her past, her family. She probably takes the bus, Megan laughed. The door slammed shut behind them. Caroline sat alone in the conference room. The fluorescent lights hummed. The $10 bill lay on the mahogany table like a tiny green tombstone. She didn't cry. She had stopped crying over Derek Sullivan 6 months ago, the night she found Megan's earring under their bed. Caroline stood up. She walked to the window and looked down at the street below. She watched Derek and Megan exit the building, laughing, climbing into his leased BMW. She reached into her bag and pulled out a different phone. Not the cracked iPhone she used around Derek. This one was sleek, black, military-grade encrypted. She pressed her thumb to the biometric lock and dialed. "Yes, ma'am." The voice was deep, gravelly, familiar. James had been her personal security detail since she was 14 years old. "It's done." "Did he sign the waiver?" "Every page." "Your father will be pleased." "My father can wait." Caroline watched Derek's BMW merge into traffic. "Where is Megan's father right now?" "Richard Price is in his office at Price Logistics. He has a meeting with his bank in 2 hours regarding his company's restructuring loan." "Who holds that loan?" "We do, ma'am. Whitmore Capital acquired it this morning." Caroline smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "And Derek's company?" "Sullivan Tech owes $3.2 million to Silicon Valley Bank. They also owe $1.8 million to a private equity firm called Obsidian Capital." "Who owns Obsidian Capital?" "You do, ma'am. We purchased the debt package from a nervous investor in Singapore. Technically, you are now Derek Sullivan's primary creditor." Caroline looked at the $10 bill still lying on the conference table. "Don't foreclose yet. Let him breathe. Let him think he's won." "Understood. And the gala invitation?" "Send it. VIP table. Position him near the front, but not center. I want him to have a good view of the stage." "Consider it done. The car is waiting at the service entrance. The Phantom or the Bentley?" "The Phantom." Caroline picked up the $10 bill and tucked it into her pocket. "I'm done pretending." She hung up and walked out of the conference room without looking back. The service entrance of the building opened onto a quiet side street. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, midnight blue, idled at the curb. A man in a gray suit stood by the open rear door. "Welcome back, Miss Whitmore." James didn't use her married name. He never had. Caroline slid into the back seat. The door closed with a solid, expensive thunk, sealing her in a cocoon of hand-stitched leather and silence. She exhaled. For 3 years she had played a role: the quiet wife, the struggling artist, the woman who clipped coupons and shopped at thrift stores. It was exhausting. She pulled the pins from her hair and let it fall in waves over her shoulders. She opened the console and retrieved a wet wipe, scrubbing away the cheap drugstore foundation she wore to look ordinary. Underneath, her skin glowed. She removed the worn cardigan and tossed it into the waste bin built into the door. Beneath it, she wore a simple white silk camisole that cost more than Derek's entire wardrobe. "Take me to the penthouse, James, and call Margaret. I need a full briefing on Sullivan Tech's financials within the hour." "Understood." The Phantom glided through the city. They weren't heading to the suburbs, where Caroline and Derek had rented a drafty townhouse. They were heading to Whitmore Tower, where the top 3 floors belonged to her family. Caroline looked out the window at the city passing by. 3 years ago, she had left this world. She had wanted a normal life. A husband who loved her for herself. Children who would grow up without bodyguards and trust funds, and the crushing weight of expectation. She had found Derek at a coffee shop. He was handsome, charming, full of dreams about changing healthcare with his startup. He didn't recognize her name, didn't know about the money. She thought she had found something real. She was 29, men, naive, desperate to believe that love could exist without dollar signs. Now she was 32, and she understood the truth. Derek Sullivan had never loved her. He had loved the idea of a supportive wife who would cook his meals and stroke his ego and never question his genius. The moment she stopped being useful, he discarded her. "Ma'am," James's voice came through the intercom. "Your father is on the line from Zurich." "Put him through." A click, and then her father's voice, deep and measured. "Caroline, I heard you signed." "Hello to you too, Dad." "Are you all right?" "I'm better than all right. I'm angry." A pause. "Good. Anger is useful. It focuses the mind." "He gave me $10 for a cab, Dad. $10. Her father's voice hardened. "Then we will ensure those $10 cost him everything he has." "The gala is in 2 weeks." "I know. Margaret briefed me this morning. You intend to reveal yourself publicly?" "Yes." "You understand what that means. The press, the attention, the end of your anonymity." Caroline thought about Derek's smirk as he threw the money on the table. She thought about Megan's laugh. "I understand." "Then I have only one question," her father's voice softened. "What do you want to wear?" Caroline laughed. It was the first genuine laugh she'd had in months. "Something that will make him choke on his champagne. I'll have the vault manager prepare the Kensington diamonds. They haven't been worn publicly since your grandmother's funeral." "The Kensingtons? Dad, that's a declaration of war." "Precisely." She could hear him smile. "He wanted a trophy wife, Caroline. Show him what a queen looks like." Meanwhile, Derek Sullivan was celebrating at a steakhouse downtown. "To freedom!" Megan clinked her glass against his. "God, I'm so glad that's over. She was so boring, Derek. Like watching paint dry." "Tell me about it." Derek loosened his tie. 3 years of my life wasted on a woman with zero ambition, zero style, zero anything. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. "Check it," Megan said. "Might be the investors." Derek picked up the phone and squinted at the screen. His eyes went wide. "No way." "What? What is it?" "It's an email from Whitmore Investment Group." Megan gasped. "The Whitmores? The ones who own like half the country?" Derek read the email aloud, his voice trembling with excitement. "Dear Mr. Sullivan, the Board of Directors of Whitmore Investment Group cordially invites you to the annual Winter Gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We have been monitoring Sullivan Tech's progress with great interest." He dropped the phone on the table. "They've been watching me, Megan. The Whitmores have been watching me. They want to acquire my company." Megan squealed so loudly that other diners turned to look. "This is it, baby. This is the deal that makes us rich." Derek raised his glass. "See? I told you Caroline was holding me back. The minute I cut her loose, the universe rewards me." He had no idea who had sent that invitation. He had no idea that the boring housewife he had just divorced was at that very moment selecting diamonds from a family vault worth more than his company would earn in 100 years. He had no idea that he wasn't walking into an acquisition meeting. He was walking into an execution. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of Whitmore Tower. Caroline stepped out of the private elevator into a world she hadn't seen in 3 years. The floors were Italian marble. The art on the walls was worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city, laid out like a glittering circuit board. Margaret Chen stood by the window. She was 62 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a charcoal suit that cost $5,000 and sensible shoes that cost even more. She had been Caroline's godmother since birth. Before that, she had been the Whitmore family's chief legal counsel for 30 years. Caroline. Margaret turned. Her face was carefully neutral, but her eyes were soft. Welcome home. Margaret. Caroline crossed the room and hugged her. I missed you. I missed you too, child. Margaret held her at arm's length. Let me look at you. 3 years married to that fool, and you still look like yourself. I was worried. You were right about him. I know, but you needed to learn it yourself. Margaret gestured to the massive screen on the living room wall. Shall we begin? The screen flickered to life. Financial charts, corporate structures, debt instruments. Sullivan Tech was bleeding from every artery. He owes $3.2 million to Silicon Valley Bank, Margaret explained. Another $1.8 to Obsidian Capital, which we now own. His payroll taxes are 4 months overdue. His servers are about to be shut off for non-payment. He told everyone he was about to IPO. He's been telling everyone that for 18 months. The reality is, he hasn't made a single profitable quarter. The only reason he's still operating is because his suppliers haven't coordinated to cut him off simultaneously. Yet. Margaret smiled. It was a shark's smile. What would you like to do? Caroline walked to the window. She could see the city below. Somewhere down there, Derek was celebrating his freedom, toasting with champagne, planning his future with Megan. The gala is in 2 weeks. Yes. Send him the invitation. Make him feel special. Let him think he's being scouted for acquisition. And then? Caroline turned around. The soft light from the window caught her face. And then I take everything. His company, his reputation, his dignity. Everything. Margaret nodded slowly. He deserves it. He does. Caroline paused. But Margaret, I need you to understand something. Yes? I'm not doing this just for revenge. Caroline's voice hardened. I'm doing this because he treated me like I was nothing. He looked at me every day for 3 years and saw nothing worth respecting. And there are millions of women out there whose husbands do the same thing. You want to make an example of him. I want to make a statement. You don't get to throw people away like garbage and walk away clean. Actions have consequences. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Your grandmother would be proud of you. My grandmother would have destroyed him in 6 hours, not 2 weeks. True, Margaret's eyes twinkled. But she also believed in making them suffer. The anticipation is half the punishment. Caroline sat down on the leather sofa. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like herself. Tell me about the gala. What's the program? The keynote speaker is traditionally the head of the Whitmore family. Your father has announced his retirement. The board expects you to take his place. Publicly? Very publicly. The announcement will be carried by every major news network. The business world has been speculating about the Whitmore succession for years. This will be the biggest story of the quarter. Caroline closed her eyes. She had spent 3 years hiding. 3 years pretending to be ordinary. 3 years hoping she could escape the weight of her name. That time was over. I'll do it, she said. But I want Derek there, front row. I want him to watch. He'll be at table 88. Perfect sightlines to the stage. Good. Caroline opened her eyes. Now, let's talk about the dress. Derek Sullivan had no idea he was being hunted. In the 2 weeks following the divorce, his life seemed to improve dramatically. His stock price ticked upward. Mysterious investors seemed interested. A tech blog published a glowing article about Sullivan Tech's potential. He didn't know that the stock movement was artificial, orchestrated by shadow brokers working for Whitmore Capital. He didn't know that the interested investors were plants, designed to inflate his ego. He didn't know that the tech blog article was paid content, purchased for $50,000 from a media company owned by the Whitmore family. He knew only that the universe was finally rewarding his genius. "I told you," he said to Megan as they shopped for gala outfits. "The moment I dropped the dead weight, everything changed." Megan held up a sequined pink dress that looked like a disco ball had exploded. "What do you think?" "Perfect. We need to make a statement." They bought the dress for $4,000. Derek put it on his company credit card, which was already maxed out. He didn't care. The Whitmore deal would solve everything. He bought himself a velvet maroon tuxedo with black lapels. He thought it made him look like a European aristocrat. It made him look like a valet driver at a themed casino. But no one told him that. No one told him anything. Because everyone who mattered was waiting for the gala. The night before the event, Caroline stood in her dressing room. 3 seamstresses moved around her like silent ghosts, making final adjustments to a gown that had taken 6 designers 300 hours to create. The dress was midnight blue, woven with crushed sapphire dust. Under normal light, it looked black. Under camera flashes, it would shimmer like the night sky. Margaret entered, carrying a steel case flanked by 2 armed guards. "The Kensington diamonds." The case opened. Inside lay a necklace that had belonged to 4 generations of Whitmore women. The central diamond was 47 carats, surrounded by cascading smaller stones that caught the light like frozen fire. "It's too much," Caroline whispered. "It's exactly enough." Margaret fastened it around her neck. "Tomorrow, you stop being Caroline Sullivan. You become Caroline Whitmore, chairwoman of the largest private investment group in North America. And Derek will be at table 88, believing he's about to become rich." Caroline looked at her reflection. The woman staring back at her was a stranger. Beautiful, powerful, terrifying. "Good," she said. "Let him dream for one more night." Tomorrow, she would wake him up. The morning of the gala, Derek Sullivan woke up feeling like a king. He rolled over in bed and checked his phone. 17 notifications. Stock alerts, email confirmations, a text from Megan asking what time the limo would arrive. "Today's the day," he muttered to himself. "Today, everything changes." He showered for 45 minutes, using products he'd bought specifically for this occasion. Imported shampoo, designer cologne, a face mask that promised to make him look 10 years younger. He needed to look perfect. The Whitmores were watching. His phone rang as he was getting dressed. The caller ID showed Patterson, his lawyer. "What?" "Derek, we have a problem. Silicon Valley Bank called. They're asking about the loan payment that was due last week. Tell them I'll have it next week. I'm closing a major deal tonight." They said they've heard that before. They're threatening to... "Patterson." Derek's voice went cold. "I don't pay you $400 an hour to bring me problems. I pay you to make them disappear. Handle it." He hung up. Nothing was going to ruin this day. He pulled the velvet maroon tuxedo from its garment bag and held it up to the light. It was magnificent, bold, distinctive, the kind of jacket that said, "I am someone important." His phone buzzed again. This time it was Megan. "Baby, I can't find my earrings. The diamond ones you bought me." "They're cubic zirconia, Megan. Check the bathroom drawer." "Same difference. What time is the car coming?" 6 o'clock. Be ready. We can't be late." "I'm always ready," she giggled. "Tonight we become royalty, Derek. I can feel it." Derek smiled at his reflection in the mirror. We already are, babe. The world just doesn't know it yet. 3 miles away, Caroline Whitmore was having a very different morning. She sat in the corner of her penthouse living room, her knees pulled up to her chest, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. She hadn't slept. Margaret found her there at 7 o'clock, still wearing the silk robe she'd put on the night before. "You're having second thoughts." Caroline didn't look up. "I'm having thoughts. I'm not sure they're second." Margaret sat down across from her. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. "Tell me," Margaret said finally, "what if I'm wrong?" "Wrong about what?" "All of it." Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. "What if I'm not doing this for justice? What if I'm just doing it because I'm hurt? Because he made me feel small?" Margaret considered this carefully. "Would those be bad reasons?" "They'd be selfish reasons." "Caroline," Margaret leaned forward, "that man took 3 years of your life. He made you believe you weren't enough. He cheated on you. He humiliated you. He threw $10 on a table and told you it was more than you deserved." "I know." "And you're worried about being selfish?" Caroline finally looked at her godmother. "I'm worried about becoming him." Margaret stood up and walked to the window. "Your grandmother once told me something," she said quietly. "She said there's a difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making sure it doesn't happen again." "Which one is this?" "That depends on you." Margaret turned around. "What do you want Derek Sullivan to learn tonight?" Caroline thought about it for a long time. "I want him to learn that people have value," she said slowly. "That you can't just use someone and throw them away. That there are consequences." "Then that's justice." Margaret's voice was firm. "And justice isn't selfish, Caroline. It's necessary." Caroline uncurled herself from the chair. She took a deep breath. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this." Margaret smiled. "The hair team arrives in 2 hours. The makeup artist is coming at noon. The dress will be delivered at 4. "And the diamonds?" "Already here, under armed guard." Caroline nodded. She walked toward her bedroom, then stopped. "Margaret?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For everything. For waiting 3 years without judging me." "I judged you constantly," Margaret said dryly. "I just did it silently." Caroline laughed. It was the last moment of lightness she would have for a very long time. By noon, the penthouse had transformed into a command center. Hairstylists, makeup artists, security personnel, communications specialists monitoring social media and news feeds, legal advisors reviewing the evening's announcements. Caroline sat in the center of it all, surprisingly calm. "The press releases are ready," James reported. "They'll go out at exactly 9:15, immediately after your speech." "What's the coverage looking like?" "CNN, MS, NBC, Fox Business, Bloomberg, CNBC. All major outlets have confirmed camera crews. The story is being positioned as the biggest succession announcement in a decade." "And Derek?" "He confirmed his attendance this morning. He's bringing Megan Price. They've rented a stretch Hummer." Caroline raised an eyebrow. "A Hummer? To a black tie gala?" "He wanted to make an impression." "Oh, he will." James hesitated. "Ma'am, there's something else." "What?" "Derek has been telling people he's expecting a major announcement tonight. He's convinced the Whitmores are going to make him an acquisition offer." "Where did he get that idea?" "We may have encouraged it." James's face was carefully neutral. Through certain channels. Caroline nodded slowly. Good. Let him believe it. Let him walk in thinking he's about to become rich. And when he realizes the truth, then he'll understand what it feels like to have everything taken away. At 4 o'clock, the dress arrived. It came in a custom case, carried by 2 handlers in white gloves. They set it on the dressing room table, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. Caroline opened the case. The midnight blue fabric seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. It was alive somehow, breathing. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's armor," Margaret corrected. "Now put it on." The transformation took another 2 hours. Layer by layer, Caroline Sullivan disappeared. The foundation erased any trace of the woman who had spent 3 years pretending to be ordinary. The eye makeup created shadows and depths that made her gaze penetrating, almost predatory. The hair was swept up in an elaborate style that exposed her neck, her shoulders, the clean lines of her collarbones. And then came the diamonds. The Kensington necklace weighed almost half a pound. It settled against her skin like a cold hand, a reminder of who she was and who she had always been. "Look," Margaret said softly. Caroline turned to the mirror. A stranger stared back. She was beautiful, terrifying, powerful. She was Caroline Whitmore, heiress to a $50 billion empire, chairwoman of the most influential private investment group in North America. She was about to destroy the man who had thrown $10 at her face. "It's time," James said from the doorway. Caroline took one last look at her reflection. "Yes," she said. "It is." The Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed for the evening. Red carpet stretched from the street to the grand entrance. Photographers lined both sides, their cameras creating a constant strobe effect. Limousines and luxury vehicles queued for blocks. This was the event of the season. The event of the decade, some said. And Derek Sullivan was stuck in traffic. "Move!" he shouted at the Hummer driver. "We're going to be late." "Sir, there's a line. Every car has to wait their turn." "I'm not every car. I'm a VIP guest." Megan patted his arm. "Baby, relax. We'll get there." "I can't relax. This is the most important night of my life." They finally reached the red carpet at 7:45, 15 minutes after the official start time. Derek stepped out of the Hummer and immediately tried to strike a pose for the photographers. Nobody took his picture. The cameras stayed lowered. The photographers checked their phones. One yawned. "Mr. Hart," Derek called out, trying to get someone's attention. "I'm Derek Sullivan, CEO of Sullivan Tech." A photographer glanced at him, then looked away. "Never heard of it," the man muttered to his colleague. Derek's face reddened. "Come on." He grabbed Megan's arm. "Let's get inside." They walked up the stairs. At the entrance, a woman with a clipboard and an earpiece checked their names. "Sullivan, table 88. 88? Derek frowned. "That seems far back. I was told I'd be near the front." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Table 88 is in an excellent position, sir. You'll have a perfect view of the stage." Something about her tone made Derek uneasy, but he pushed the feeling aside. "Fine. Let's go, Megan." They entered the great hall. Derek had never seen anything like it. The ceiling was lit with projection mapping, showing a slowly rotating galaxy. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung at intervals. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. He felt suddenly, painfully aware of his velvet jacket. It had seemed bold in his apartment mirror. Here, surrounded by men in understated black tuxedos, it looked garish, cheap. "Champagne?" A waiter appeared with a tray. "Yes." Derek grabbed 2 glasses and handed one to Megan. "Drink up, babe. We need to look comfortable." They navigated through the crowd. Derek tried to stop several people he recognized from magazine covers. Nobody stopped back. They found table 88 near the front of the room, slightly to the right of the main stage. It was a good position, actually. Clear sight lines, close to the action. But it was also strangely isolated. The tables on either side were empty. No place cards, no settings. "Where is everyone?" Megan asked. "Networking, probably." Derek sat down heavily. "They'll show up when the program starts." He was wrong. By 8 o'clock, the room was full. Every table was occupied, except the ones surrounding table 88. Derek and Megan sat alone in a bubble of empty space, surrounded by the most powerful people in the country. He was starting to sweat. "Something's wrong," he muttered. "What do you mean?" "This doesn't feel right. Why are we so isolated? Why won't anyone look at us?" Megan glanced around nervously. "Maybe they just don't know who we are yet." After the announcement, "Yeah," Derek nodded, trying to convince himself. "After the announcement, everything will change." At exactly 8:30, the lights dimmed. The orchestra stopped playing. A man walked onto the stage. He was older, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Derek's car. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice carried through the room without amplification, "welcome to the annual Whitmore Gala." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "Tonight is a historic evening. For 40 years, the Whitmore Investment Group has been led by James Whitmore III. Under his leadership, our organization has grown from a regional fund to a global powerhouse." More applause. Derek leaned forward. "But times change. Leaders change. And tonight, we are here to witness the beginning of a new era." Derek's heart pounded. This was it. The announcement. The acquisition offer. He straightened his jacket and practiced his surprised face. "It is my honor," the man continued, "to introduce the new chairwoman of the Whitmore Investment Group, the sole heir to the Whitmore legacy, a woman who has spent the last 3 years studying our economy from the ground up, learning what it means to build something from nothing." Derek frowned. "Wait, the last 3 years?" "Please welcome Miss Caroline Whitmore." The spotlight swung to the grand staircase. Derek's champagne glass slipped from his fingers. At the top of the stairs stood a woman in midnight blue, draped in diamonds that caught the light like stars. He knew that face. He knew those eyes. He had looked into those eyes for 3 years and seen nothing worth keeping. "No," he whispered. Megan grabbed his arm. Derek, that's—" "I know who it is." Caroline began to descend the stairs. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. She didn't walk like the woman who had cooked his meals and done his laundry and listened to his complaints. She walked like a queen entering her throne room. The applause was thunderous. Derek couldn't hear it. There was a roaring in his ears, a rushing of blood, a collapse of everything he thought he knew. His wife. His boring, useless, worthless wife. His charity case. She reached the bottom of the stairs and walked to the podium. She stood there for a moment, letting the applause wash over her. Then she raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "Thank you," Caroline said. Her voice was different, stronger. The voice of someone who had been trained since birth to command rooms full of powerful people. "Tonight, I want to talk about value." She paused. "In finance, we calculate value with numbers. Assets minus liabilities. Revenue versus cost. It's clean, mathematical, easy to understand." She stepped out from behind the podium. "But in life, value is harder to measure. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we overlook, the ones we dismiss, the ones we throw away because we're too blind to see what's right in front of us. Her eyes swept across the room and stopped. She was looking directly at table 88, directly at Derek. For the past 3 years, Caroline continued, her gaze never wavering, I've been conducting an experiment. I wanted to understand how people behave when they think no one is watching, when they think there are no consequences. Derek felt the room shift, felt hundreds of eyes turning toward him. I learned a lot. Caroline's voice dropped to something almost intimate. I learned that some people build, and some people just take. They take credit. They take money. They take love. And when they've taken everything they can, they throw what's left away, like garbage. She held up something small. It glinted under the lights. It was a crumpled $10 bill. They throw away $10, Caroline said, and think they're being generous. The room was absolutely silent. Derek wanted to run. His legs wouldn't work. Tonight, Caroline announced, Whitmore Investment Group is launching a new initiative. We're calling it the Accountability Project. We're going to identify companies built on exploitation. Companies that use people and discard them. Companies that confuse arrogance with competence. She smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Derek had ever seen. And we're going to hold them accountable. Starting tonight. Starting with a company called Sullivan Tech. Derek stood up so fast, his chair crashed backward. Caroline, his voice cracked. Ellie, what are you doing? The room gasped. She knew him. He knew her. The boring housewife who had just been revealed as one of the richest women in the world. Hello, Derek, Caroline said from the stage. I see you got my invitation. Your invitation? He stumbled forward, past empty tables, toward the stage. You sent the invitation? Of course I did. I wanted you to have a good seat. Security guards moved to intercept him, but Caroline raised her hand. Let him come. He deserves to hear this up close. Derek stopped at the edge of the stage, looking up at the woman he had dismissed, mocked, and thrown away. I don't understand, he said. You were nobody. You were a barista. You cooked dinner and did laundry and you never once asked about my life before we met. Caroline's voice was ice. You never asked about my family, my education, my career. You saw what you wanted to see, Derek. A supporting character in your story. But the townhouse, the Honda, the thrift store clothes. A costume, a test. I wanted to know if you could love someone for who they are, not what they have. And you failed. She turned back to the audience. 6 months ago, Derek Sullivan signed divorce papers, giving up all claims to his wife's assets. He thought he was discarding a burden. In reality, he was signing away any claim to $50 billion. The room erupted in murmurs. Derek felt his knees giving way. But that's not all. Caroline's voice carried over the noise. 3 hours ago, Whitmore Capital called in the loans on Sullivan Tech. Mr. Sullivan now owes us $5 million, payable immediately. $5 million? Derek screamed. I don't have $5 million. I know. Caroline looked at him with something that might have been pity. That's why we're seizing the collateral. As of 9 o'clock tonight, Sullivan Tech no longer exists. You can't do that. I already have. She held up a document. This is the lien, filed with the court this afternoon. Your company belongs to me now. Your employees have been offered positions at Whitmore subsidiaries. Your technology has been absorbed. Your office lease has been terminated. Derek fell to his knees. The most powerful people in the country watched him collapse. Please, he begged. Caroline, please. We were married. We had something. We had nothing. Her voice didn't waver. You had a servant you didn't have to pay. That's all I ever was to you. I'll change. I can change. Just give me another chance. Caroline descended from the stage. She walked until she was standing directly in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the diamonds blazing around her neck. She leaned down. You threw $10 at me, she whispered, and told me it was more than I deserved. She straightened up. Security, please escort Mr. Sullivan from the building. He's trespassing on Whitmore property. Two large men appeared at Derek's sides. They lifted him by his arms, his feet barely touching the ground. Caroline! He screamed as they dragged him toward the exit. You can't do this! I'll sue! I'll go to the press! I'll tell everyone what you did! Caroline watched him go. Tell them whatever you want, Derek, she called out. See who believes you. The doors closed behind him. The room was silent for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. It spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet, applauding. They weren't applauding a business announcement. They were applauding justice. Caroline stood at the center of it all, diamonds blazing, the crumpled $10 bill still in her hand. She had waited 3 years for this moment. She thought it would feel like victory. Instead, it felt like freedom. But outside, in the cold night air, Derek Sullivan was already planning his revenge. The security guards threw Derek onto the sidewalk like a bag of garbage. He landed hard on his knees, the impact sending shockwaves of pain up his legs. His velvet jacket tore at the shoulder. His hands scraped against the concrete. You can't do this to me! He screamed at the closed doors. I'm Derek Sullivan! I'm somebody! The doors didn't open. The paparazzi did. They swarmed him like vultures. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust in his face. They had been waiting for the real story of the evening, and Derek Sullivan, crawling on the sidewalk, was exactly what they wanted. Mr. Sullivan, is it true you were married to Caroline Whitmore? Did you know she was a billionaire? How does it feel to lose everything? Derek scrambled to his feet. His mind was racing, spinning, searching for an angle. He was a startup guy. He knew how to pivot. He knew how to turn disaster into opportunity. She's lying, he shouted into the nearest camera. Caroline Whitmore is a fraud. She manipulated me. She trapped me into a marriage under false pretenses. The reporters exchanged glances. Can you elaborate, Mr. Sullivan? She pretended to be poor. She lied about who she was. That's fraud. That's entrapment. I'm going to sue her for everything she has. A reporter in the front row lowered her microphone. Mr. Sullivan, are you saying you only married her because you thought she was poor? Derek's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. He had walked directly into a trap of his own making. That's not what I meant. It sounds like that's exactly what you meant. I loved her. I loved her regardless of money. Then why did you divorce her? Because she was holding me back. Holding you back from what? Her $50 billion? The reporters laughed. Derek felt his face burning. He looked around wildly, searching for an escape, and spotted Megan standing 20 feet away, her pink sequin dress glittering under the streetlights. Megan, come here. Tell them I'm not the bad guy. Megan didn't move. Megan! She looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. Disgust. Complete and utter disgust. You told me she was crazy, Megan said. Her voice carried clearly in the night air. You told me she was a nobody, a charity case. She was. I thought she was. You divorced a billionaire, Derek. Megan's voice was flat. You threw away $50 billion to be with me. And my dad's company is worth maybe 20 million on a good day. Megan, baby, we can figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling an Uber. Don't contact me again. Megan! She walked away without looking back. The reporters captured every moment. Derek stood alone on the sidewalk, surrounded by cameras, watching his girlfriend abandon him the same way he had abandoned his wife. Mr. Sullivan, a reporter pushed forward. One more question. Derek turned, hoping for a sympathetic ear. How does it feel to be the dumbest man in America? The laughter that followed him was the cruelest sound he had ever heard. Inside the gala, Caroline was accepting congratulations from people whose names she had known since childhood. Senators, CEOs, foreign dignitaries. They lined up to shake her hand, to kiss her cheek, to welcome her back to the world she had abandoned 3 years ago. Brilliant performance, Caroline. Your grandmother would be proud. That man got exactly what he deserved. Caroline smiled and nodded and said all the right things, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept seeing Derek's face when he realized who she was. The shock, the horror, the dawning understanding that everything he thought he knew was wrong. She had wanted him to feel that. She had needed him to feel that. So why did she feel so empty? Caroline, Margaret appeared at her elbow. There's a situation. What kind of situation? Derek is outside giving interviews. He's claiming you defrauded him. Caroline's jaw tightened. Let him talk. No one will believe him. That's not the situation. Margaret's voice dropped. He's also claiming you hid a child from him. Caroline froze. What? He found something, Caroline. Medical records. A consultation you had before the wedding. That was supposed to be destroyed. Apparently, it wasn't. Caroline's heart was pounding now. She looked around the room at the hundreds of faces, all of them watching her, judging her, waiting for her next move. Where is he now? Still on the sidewalk. He's building a crowd. Get James. Get the car. We're going outside. Caroline, that's exactly what he wants. I know. Caroline's voice was steel. But I'm not going to hide. Not anymore. She walked toward the main entrance, the crowd parting before her like water before a ship. The heavy bronze doors opened. The night air hit her face, cold and sharp. Derek was exactly where Margaret said he would be, standing in a circle of reporters, his torn jacket hanging off one shoulder, his face red with exertion. There she is, he screamed, pointing at Caroline. There's the liar. Ask her about the baby. Ask her about my son. The reporters turned. Cameras swiveled. The crowd on the street grew larger. Caroline walked down the steps slowly, deliberately. She didn't rush. She didn't hide. She stopped 5 steps above Derek, looking down at him. You want to talk about children, Derek? You had my baby, he shouted. You hid my son from me. That's kidnapping. That's a crime. Is it? I found the medical records, the consultation. You were pregnant before we got married. Caroline didn't blink. Yes, she said clearly. I have a son. His name is Lucas. He's 3 years old. The crowd gasped. Derek's face twisted into a triumphant smile. See? She admits it. She admits she hid my child. Your child? Caroline's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Derek, do you remember the fertility testing we did before the wedding? Derek's smile faltered. What does that have to do with anything? You insisted on it. You wanted to make sure any children we had would be genetically superior. Your words, not mine. So? So you refused to be tested yourself. You said you were obviously fine. A prime specimen. I am fine. No, Derek. Caroline's voice was almost gentle now, almost pitying. You're not. She turned to Margaret, who handed her a folder. I found out during those tests, Caroline continued. The doctor ran a sample without telling you. It was part of the standard panel. Found out what? Caroline opened the folder. You have a condition called azoospermia, Derek. Complete absence of sperm. You've never been able to father children. You never will be. The silence that followed was absolute. Derek stared at her. That's a lie. It's a medical fact. Caroline held up the document. Confirmed by 3 separate specialists. I've had these results for 3 years. But the baby. If I'm not the father, then who? An anonymous donor. Caroline's voice didn't waver. I wanted a family. You couldn't give me one. So I found another way. You cheated on me. I used a medical procedure while you were on a boys' trip to Vegas that I paid for. Caroline smiled coldly. You were too drunk to notice I was gone for a day. Derek's face went through a dozen emotions in 5 seconds. Shock, denial, rage, humiliation, despair. You can't prove any of this, he whispered. I can prove all of it. Caroline closed the folder. And more importantly, I don't have to, because you signed away any claim to any children in the divorce settlement. Clause 21, Section B. You waived all parental rights to any dependents in my care. I didn't read that clause. I know. Caroline tucked the folder under her arm. You were too busy looking at Megan to read anything. Derek fell to his knees for the 2nd time that night. The cameras captured every moment. Please, he begged. Caroline, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. You didn't want to understand. Caroline's voice hardened. You wanted a servant, a cheerleader, someone to make you feel important. You never once asked what I wanted, what I needed, who I was. I can change. No, Derek, you can't. She took a step down toward him. Because you don't think you did anything wrong. Even now, even after everything, you think you're the victim. I am the victim. You tricked me. I gave you 3 years to show me who you really were. Caroline's eyes were blazing now. And you showed me. Every single day. You showed me contempt, dismissal, cruelty. You showed me exactly what you thought I was worth. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the crumpled $10 bill. $10. She let it flutter to the ground at his feet. That's what you thought 3 years of my life was worth. $10 for cab fare. Derek stared at the bill lying on the concrete. I'm keeping this, Caroline said, picking it back up. As a reminder. Every time I doubt myself, every time I wonder if I was too harsh, I'm going to look at this bill and remember exactly who you are. She turned and began walking back up the stairs. Caroline, Derek screamed after her. This isn't over. I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone your secrets. She paused at the top of the stairs and looked back. What secrets, Derek? The whole world just watched me tell them everything. She smiled. You have nothing left to threaten me with. No company, no money, no reputation, no leverage. I have the truth. The truth, Caroline laughed. Derek, you don't even know what that word means. She walked through the bronze doors, which closed behind her with a resonant boom. Derek was left alone on the sidewalk, surrounded by reporters who were already filing their stories. The headlines were being written in real time. Billionaire heiress destroys ex-husband at charity gala. Secret wife revealed as Whitmore fortune heir. Man divorces billionaire, gets exactly what he deserves. Derek's phone started buzzing. He pulled it out with shaking hands. Voicemail from Patterson. Derek, I quit. Don't call me again. Text from his landlord. Your lease is terminated. Vacate by end of week. Email from Silicon Valley Bank. Final notice. Legal action pending. Notification from his bank. Account frozen pending investigation. Everything was falling apart. Everything he had built. Everything he had stolen. Everything he had pretended to earn was crumbling around him. He looked up at the museum, at the warm light spilling through the windows, at the world of wealth and power that had just slammed its doors in his face. "This isn't over," he muttered. "This isn't over." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. It was over. He just didn't know how over it really was. Inside the gala, Caroline found a quiet corner and allowed herself one moment of weakness. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. She had just destroyed a man in front of the entire world, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it. "Caroline," Margaret appeared beside her, "are you all right?" "I don't know." "You did what needed to be done." "Did I?" Caroline looked at her godmother. "Or did I just become exactly what he accused me of being? A rich person using their power to crush someone smaller?" Margaret was quiet for a moment. "There's a difference," she said finally, "between crushing someone and holding them accountable." "Is there? It didn't feel different out there." "It never does." Margaret put a hand on Caroline's arm. "Justice isn't supposed to feel good, Caroline. If it felt good, it would be revenge." "Then how do I know the difference?" "You know because you're asking the question." Margaret's voice was gentle. "Derek would never ask. He would never wonder if he went too far. That's the difference between you and him." Caroline took a deep breath. "Is it over?" "The public part is over. The legal part is just beginning." Margaret checked her phone. "The SEC is opening an investigation into Sullivan Tech's financial statements. Apparently, Derek's been inflating his numbers for years." "I didn't know about that." "We didn't either until we started digging. The man was a fraud in every sense of the word." Carolyn nodded slowly. "What about Megan and her father?" "Richard Price is cooperating fully. He's agreed to testify about Derek's business practices in exchange for our restructuring his loan on favorable terms." "And Megan?" "Gone. She took an Uber to the airport an hour ago. Last we heard, she was flying to her mother's place in Florida." "Good." Carolyn straightened her shoulders. She wasn't innocent, but she wasn't the real problem either. "No," Margaret agreed. "The real problem is currently being escorted off the premises by NYPD for creating a public disturbance." "They arrested him?" "Not yet, but he's been warned. If he comes back, they will." Caroline walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere down there, Derek was stumbling through the streets, trying to figure out what had just happened to his life. 3 years ago, she had loved him. Now she felt nothing but a hollow kind of exhaustion. "I want to go home," she said quietly. "The gala isn't over for another 2 hours." "I know, but I want to go home. I want to see Lucas." Margaret nodded. "I'll have James bring the car around." "Thank you." Caroline paused. "Margaret?" "Yes?" "Do you think he'll ever understand what he did wrong?" Margaret considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "Men like Derek never do. They spend their whole lives convinced they're victims, convinced the world is unfair, convinced everyone else is the problem." "That's sad." "It is, but it's not your responsibility to fix him, Caroline. Some people are beyond fixing. All you can do is protect yourself and the people you love." Carolyn touched the Kensington diamonds at her throat. "I spent 3 years trying to be normal," she said. "Trying to be ordinary. trying to be someone a man like Derek could love. And? And I learned that I don't want to be ordinary. Carolyn's voice strengthened. I am Carolyn Whitmore. I am the heir to a $50 billion empire. I am powerful and capable and worthy of respect. Yes, you are. And I'm never going to pretend otherwise again. Margaret smiled. Welcome back, Carolyn. The Rolls-Royce was waiting at the service entrance. Carolyn slid into the back seat, the midnight blue dress pooling around her like liquid shadow. The diamonds caught the streetlights as they drove through the city. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. You think you won, but you have a secret too, don't you? Does the board know about the donor? Does Lucas know who his real father is? Caroline stared at the message. Someone else knew about Lucas. Someone else was threatening her. And she had a terrible feeling she knew exactly who it was. James, she said quietly. Yes, ma'am? How thoroughly did we investigate Derek's background? Thoroughly enough. Why? Because I don't think he's working alone. She looked out the window at the city lights streaming past. The battle with Derek was over. But the war, she realized, was just beginning. Caroline didn't sleep that night. She sat in the nursery watching Lucas breathe, his small chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of childhood dreams. He looked so much like her, the same brown hair, the same gray-blue eyes, the same stubborn chin. But there was something else in his face, too, something she tried not to think about. The donor had been anonymous. That was the whole point. She had chosen a profile based on health history, education, and genetic markers. She had never wanted to know the man's name. Now someone was threatening to reveal it. Her phone sat on the table beside her, the threatening text still glowing on the screen. Does Lucas know who his real father is? Who had sent it? Derek was the obvious answer. But Derek was drunk on a sidewalk somewhere, his life in ruins. He didn't have the resources to investigate her. He didn't have the intelligence to uncover something she had buried so carefully. Someone else was pulling the strings. Her phone rang at 3 a.m. Caroline? Margaret's voice was tense. We have a problem. I know, I got the text. It's worse than a text. Check your email. Caroline opened her inbox with trembling fingers. There was a message from an encrypted address. No subject line, just an attachment. She opened it. It was a photograph of a birth certificate. Lucas's birth certificate. The one she kept in the vault at Whitmore Tower, behind 3 inches of reinforced steel. The father's name had been redacted on the official copy, but someone had filled it in with red ink. Dr. Michael Chen. Caroline's blood turned to ice. Margaret, how did they get this? We don't know yet. The vault hasn't been breached. The electronic records are secure. This had to come from the original source. The fertility clinic. The clinic was hacked 3 months ago. We didn't think any of our files were compromised. Apparently we were wrong. Caroline stared at the name on the screen. Dr. Michael Chen. She knew that name. Everyone in America knew that name. Margaret? Her voice was barely a whisper. Michael Chen is the Secretary of Health. I know. He's married. He has 3 children. He's been mentioned as a potential presidential candidate. I know, Caroline. If this gets out, it destroys him. It destroys you. It destroys Lucas. Margaret's voice was grim. And whoever has this information knows exactly what they have. Caroline's mind was racing. Michael Chen had been a young doctor 15 years ago, working at a prestigious fertility clinic to pay off his medical school loans. He had donated samples for extra income, like thousands of other students. He had no idea one of those samples had been used. He had no idea he had a son. "Who else knows about this?" Caroline demanded. "The person who sent the text. The person who hacked the clinic. And now, potentially, anyone they've shared it with. Can we trace the hack? We're working on it, but whoever did this is sophisticated. They're using multiple proxy servers, encrypted communications. This isn't some amateur blackmailer." "Then who?" "That's what we need to find out." Caroline hung up and looked at her son. Lucas stirred in his sleep, rolling over and clutching his stuffed elephant tighter. He didn't know anything about this. He didn't know his mother was one of the richest women in the world. He didn't know his biological father was a cabinet secretary. He didn't know that powerful forces were gathering to use him as a weapon. "I'll protect you," Caroline whispered. "Whatever it takes." Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "Tick-tock, Caroline. You have 48 hours to transfer $50 million to the following account, or the whole world learns about Dr. Chen's little donation." $50 million. That was nothing to Caroline. She could transfer that amount without even noticing the loss. But she knew better than to pay blackmailers. Once you paid, they owned you forever. "James," she spoke into her security earpiece, "wake everyone up. We have a situation." By dawn, the penthouse had become a war room. Security specialists, cyber experts, private investigators. Margaret coordinating everything with the precision of a military general. "The hack originated in Eastern Europe," one of the tech specialists reported, "but it was routed through servers in Singapore, Brazil, and finally a coffee shop Wi-Fi in Delaware." "Delaware?" Caroline frowned. "That seems oddly specific." "It's meant to throw us off. No one sophisticated enough to hack that clinic would be sloppy enough to use a traceable endpoint. This is misdirection." "Then trace the misdirection." "We're trying, but whoever this is, they're good. Really good." Margaret pulled Caroline aside. "There's another possibility we need to consider." "What?" "Inside job. Someone with access to your personal files." "That's impossible. Only you and my father know about the donor. And the clinic staff. And the doctor who performed the procedure. And anyone who's had access to your medical records in the past 3 years." Caroline's heart sank. "The townhouse." "What about it?" "Derek had access to everything when we were married. My computer, my files." "I was careful, but if he found one document, if he made one copy, then he could have sold the information to someone else. Someone with the resources to exploit it." Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened for 30 seconds, and went pale. "Caroline, turn on the news." Caroline grabbed the remote and switched on the television. Derek's face filled the screen. He was standing outside a courthouse, surrounded by reporters, looking considerably more composed than he had the night before. Someone had given him a new suit. Someone had coached him on what to say. "I'm filing suit against Caroline Whitmore for fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy to deprive me of my parental rights," Derek announced into the cameras. "During our marriage, she concealed her true identity, manipulated our finances, and hid from me the existence of a child she claims is not mine. Mr. Sullivan, do you have evidence to support these claims?" "I have all the evidence I need." Derek smiled. It was a confident smile, a coached smile. "And soon, the whole world will know who Caroline Whitmore really is." Caroline muted the television. "He's working with someone." "Obviously," Margaret agreed. "But who?" "Someone who hates me. Someone who has resources. Someone who knows about Michael Chen." "That's a very short list." "Then let's start making it shorter." Caroline walked to the window. The city stretched out below her, Millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the war being waged in the clouds above them. "Pull up everyone who might have a grudge against the Whitmore family," she ordered. "Business rivals, former employees, anyone we've beaten in a negotiation or acquisition in the past decade. That's hundreds of names. Then we'd better start reading." The investigation moved fast. By noon, they had eliminated most of the obvious suspects. Business rivals didn't have access to medical records. Former employees didn't have the resources for international hacking. But one name kept surfacing: Victoria Price, Megan's mother. "She was a forensic accountant before she married Richard Price," Margaret reported. "Specialized in corporate investigations. Left the field when Megan was born but kept up her certifications. Why would she care about me? Because her daughter's reputation has been destroyed. Because her ex-husband's company is now under our control. Because you publicly humiliated her family at the most watched event of the year." But the timeline doesn't work. The clinic was hacked 3 months ago. I hadn't even filed for divorce yet. Unless she was already investigating you. Caroline went cold. "What do you mean?" "Richard Price knew his daughter was having an affair with Derek. He also knew Derek was married. What if he hired his ex-wife to dig up dirt on you? Background check. Standard due diligence." And she found the clinic records by accident. Or by design. Victoria Price is very thorough. Caroline's phone buzzed. Another text. 47 hours remaining. The price just went up. 100 million. She's testing us, Caroline realized, seeing how we respond. "What do you want to do?" "I want to meet her." "Caroline, that's incredibly dangerous." "So is letting her control the narrative." Caroline turned to James. "Find Victoria Price. Tell her I want to talk. Just the two of us." "That's suicide." "No, it's negotiation. And I've been trained for this since I was 12 years old." The meeting happened at 4 p.m. in a neutral location, a private room at an upscale restaurant in Midtown. Victoria Price was already there when Caroline arrived. She was in her late 50s, with silver hair cut short and practical, wearing a gray suit that looked expensive without being flashy. Her eyes were cold and calculating. "Mrs. Whitmore." Victoria didn't stand. Or should I say, Ms. Sullivan. "Caroline is fine." She sat down across from her. "Thank you for meeting me." "Did I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, Victoria. That's why we're here." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "I have to admit, I'm impressed. Most people in your position would have paid the first demand, hoping the problem would go away." "Most people in my position have never been tested." "And you have?" "My grandmother built our family fortune during the Depression by outmaneuvering men who thought women couldn't understand money." Caroline's voice was steady. "I've been trained to handle pressure since I could walk." "Good," Victoria smiled. "Then this should be interesting." "What do you want?" "I told you. 100 million. "No. What do you really want?" Victoria's smile faded slightly. "I want my daughter's life back. I want my ex-husband's dignity restored. I want the woman who destroyed my family to understand what it feels like to lose everything." "Your daughter chose to have an affair with a married man. Your husband pursued her. That doesn't make her innocent." "No, but it doesn't make her guilty either." Victoria's voice hardened. "She was 26 years old, Caroline. Young, impressionable. Derek told her you were separated, told her the marriage was over. She believed him." "And you believe her?" "I believe she made a mistake. I don't believe she deserved to be humiliated on national television." Caroline considered this. "If I had known Megan was being lied to, I might have handled things differently." "But you didn't ask. You assumed. Just like Derek assumed about you." The words hit harder than Caroline expected. What are you saying? I'm saying you're not as different from your ex-husband as you like to think. Victoria leaned forward. You saw Megan as a villain because it was easier than seeing her as a victim. You destroyed Derek because it felt good, not because it was right. He deserved it. Maybe. But did Megan? Did her father? Did the employees at Sullivan Tech who lost their jobs when you seized the company? Carolyn's hands were trembling. I offered them positions at Whitmore subsidiaries. Some of them, not all. 23 people lost their jobs permanently because you wanted revenge. I didn't know. You didn't ask. Victoria's voice was ice. Just like Derek didn't ask about you. The silence stretched between them. What do you want? Carolyn asked again, her voice quieter now. I want you to understand something. Victoria's eyes bored into hers. I'm not the villain in this story, Caroline. Neither is my daughter. The only villain is the man who lied to all of us. Then why are you blackmailing me? Because you have something I need, and because you won't give it to me any other way. What do you need? Richard's company. You control the loan now. You could forgive it. You could give him a chance to rebuild. That's what this is about? A business deal? It's about family. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Richard has given everything to that company. It's all he has left. If you foreclose, he'll lose his home, his savings, everything he's worked for. And Megan will blame herself forever. Caroline stared at her. You love your daughter. More than anything in this world. Even after what she did? Children make mistakes, Caroline. That's what they do. The question is whether we help them learn or abandon them to suffer. Caroline thought about Lucas, about the lengths she would go to protect him, about the things she would do if anyone threatened him. If I forgive the loan, she said slowly, will you destroy the files? Every copy and the text messages? The blackmail? It all disappears. How do I know you're telling the truth? Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. This contains every file I have on you. The clinic records, the donor information, everything. She placed it on the table. Take it, verify it, and then decide whether you want to continue this war or end it. Caroline picked up the drive. It felt impossibly light for something that could destroy so many lives. Why should I trust you? Because I'm not your enemy, Caroline. Derek is. He's the one who started all of this. He's the one who lied to my daughter, used your money, and then tried to throw you away. He's finished. I destroyed him. Did you? Victoria's eyebrows rose. He filed suit this morning. He's going on talk shows tomorrow. He's building a narrative that paints you as the villain and him as the victim. No one will believe him. Some people will. Some people always do. And he has new lawyers now. Expensive ones. Who's paying for them? Victoria's face went still. I don't know. You're lying. I'm not. He showed up this morning with a legal team I've never seen before. Someone is funding him. Someone with deep pockets and a grudge against your family. Caroline's mind raced through possibilities. Who else hates the Whitmores? Everyone you've ever beaten in business. Everyone who's lost money because of your decisions. Everyone who envies what you have. That doesn't narrow it down. No, it doesn't. Victoria stood up. Think about my offer, Caroline. Forgive the loan. End this war. Or keep fighting and see who's left standing when the dust clears. She walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. What? Derek doesn't know about Michael Chen. I've never told him. Then how did he know to threaten me about the child? He didn't. He was bluffing. He found the consultation receipt and assumed there was a secret. He has no idea how deep it goes. But someone does. Yes. Victoria's voice was grim. Someone does, and they're not working with me." She left. Caroline sat alone in the empty room, staring at the USB drive in her hand. There was another player in this game. Someone with resources. Someone with information. Someone who had been planning this long before the gala. Her phone buzzed. A text from a different unknown number. "Nice meeting, Caroline. But Victoria doesn't know everything. Neither do you. The real game is just beginning." Caroline's blood ran cold. She was being watched. She had been watched this whole time, and whoever was watching knew exactly where she was. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photograph. Lucas, playing in the penthouse nursery, taken from inside the building. Caroline screamed for James. The hunt was on. James had Lucas in his arms before Caroline reached the penthouse. "He's safe," James reported. "No one got inside." The photo was taken through the window, telephoto lens, long range. How long range? At least half a mile. Professional equipment. Caroline grabbed her son and held him so tight he squirmed. "Mama, too tight!" "Sorry, baby, sorry." She loosened her grip but didn't let go. "Margaret, I want every building within a mile radius checked, every rooftop, every window with a sight line to this apartment." "Already on it." "And I want Lucas moved, tonight, somewhere no one knows about." "The Vermont estate?" "Too obvious. Somewhere off the books." "I have a place," James said quietly. "A cabin in Montana. Not connected to any Whitmore holdings. Not in any database." "How do you have a cabin in Montana?" "I was planning to retire there someday." James's face was unreadable. "It's completely secure. Take him. Take 2 of your best people. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even me." "Caroline, if you don't know where he is..." "Then I can't be forced to tell anyone." Caroline kissed Lucas's forehead. "Mama has to do something important, baby. James is going to take you on an adventure." "Adventure?" Lucas's eyes lit up. "The best adventure, with mountains and trees and maybe even deer." "Real deer?" "Real deer." Caroline's voice cracked. "I'll come find you soon, okay? I promise." She handed her son to James. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. "Protect him," she whispered. "With my life." James carried Lucas toward the private elevator. At the last moment, Lucas looked back and waved. "Bye, Mama." The elevator doors closed. Caroline stood frozen, staring at the empty space where her son had been. "Caroline," Margaret's voice was gentle, "we'll find whoever did this." "I know we will." Caroline's voice hardened into steel. "And when we do, I'm going to destroy them." The investigation accelerated. Every resource the Whitmore family possessed was deployed. Private investigators, corporate intelligence specialists, former government agents with access to databases that officially didn't exist. Within 6 hours, they had a lead. "The photo was taken from the Meridian building," one of the tech specialists reported. 43rd floor. The office is leased to a shell company called Pinnacle Holdings." "Who owns Pinnacle Holdings?" "That's where it gets interesting. The company is registered in the Caymans, but the beneficial owner is hidden behind 3 layers of trusts." "Can you trace it?" "We're working on it, but there's something else." The specialist pulled up a document on the screen. "Pinnacle Holdings made a wire transfer yesterday. $500,000 to a law firm in Manhattan." "Which law firm?" "Morrison and Blake. They specialize in high-profile litigation." Margaret went pale. "That's the firm representing Derek." Caroline stared at the screen. "Someone is funding Derek's lawsuit. Someone with enough money to hide behind offshore trusts. Someone who's been watching me for months." The question is, who? No. Caroline's voice was quiet. The question is, why? She walked to the window. The city lights sparkled below, indifferent to the drama unfolding in the clouds. This isn't about money, she said slowly. Whoever this is, they're not trying to blackmail me. They're trying to destroy me. Why? Because I have something they want, or because I did something they can't forgive. You've made enemies, Caroline. That's unavoidable in business. Business enemies don't take pictures of my son. Caroline's voice was ice. This is personal. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello, Caroline. The voice was distorted, mechanical, unrecognizable. Did you enjoy my photograph? Who are you? Someone who's been watching you for a very long time. What do you want? I want what you took from me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. The voice laughed. It was an ugly sound. Think back, Carolyn. Think back 15 years. Think about the decisions your family made. Think about the people they crushed. My family has made thousands of business decisions. This wasn't business. This was murder. Carolyn's blood turned to ice. I don't understand. You will. The voice dropped lower. Check your email. I've sent you a gift. A piece of history your family tried very hard to bury. The line went dead. Carolyn's hands were shaking as she opened her email. There was a new message. No subject. One attachment. She opened it. It was an old newspaper article from 15 years ago. Local paper. Small town in Ohio. Factory closure devastates community. 3 workers take own lives. Carolyn read the article with growing horror. The factory had been owned by a company called Midwest Manufacturing. They made auto parts. Employed 300 people in a town of 2,000. 15 years ago, Whitmore Investment Group had acquired Midwest Manufacturing's debt. They had called in the loans. The factory closed within a month. 3 workers killed themselves within the following year. One of them was named Thomas Wright. He had left behind a wife and a 12-year-old son. Oh, God, Caroline whispered. Margaret looked over her shoulder. What is it? I think I know who's doing this. She pulled up another search. Thomas Wright's family. His wife had died 5 years after him. Cancer. Probably couldn't afford treatment after losing her health insurance. His son had been put into foster care at 17. His son's name was Michael Wright. Run that name, Caroline ordered. Michael Wright. Everything you can find. The search results came back within minutes. Michael Wright had changed his name at 18. His new name was Marcus Stone. Stone. Margaret's voice was hollow. As in Stone Capital? The hedge fund that's been trying to acquire shares in Whitmore companies for the past 3 years? The same. He's been planning this for over a decade. Longer. Caroline's voice was barely audible. He's been planning this since he was 12 years old. She sat down heavily. Everything made sense now. The mysterious investor who had been circling Whitmore Holdings. The sophisticated hack of the fertility clinic. The funding for Derek's lawsuit. The photographs of Lucas. It was all one person. One person who had lost everything because of a decision the Whitmore family made before Caroline was old enough to understand what her family did. I need to meet him, Caroline said. That's insane. He's not going to stop, Margaret. Not until he gets what he wants. And what does he want? Revenge? Money? Your company? I don't know, but I need to find out. Caroline, this man has been stalking you for years. He took pictures of your son. He's dangerous. He's also in pain, Caroline looked at her godmother. His father killed himself because of what we did. His mother died because she couldn't afford medical care. He grew up in foster homes, probably abused, definitely alone. That doesn't excuse what he's done. No, but it explains it. Caroline stood up. Set up a meeting. Public place. Maximum security. But I need to face him. And if he tries to kill you, then James's men will stop him. James is in Montana with Lucas. Then send someone else. Caroline's voice hardened. I'm not hiding anymore. I've been hiding for 3 years. Look where it got me. The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon. A private room at the Plaza Hotel. Armed security outside. Surveillance cameras inside. Caroline arrived first. She wore simple clothes. No jewelry, no makeup. She wanted Marcus Stone to see her as a person, not a symbol. He arrived exactly on time. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s, dark hair, dark eyes, good-looking in a sharp, hungry way. He walked in and sat down across from her without greeting. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You look like your father, Caroline said finally. Marcus flinched. You've seen pictures? I looked him up, after I got your message. Caroline's voice was quiet. He seems like he was a good man. He was the best man. Marcus's voice cracked. He worked at that factory for 20 years. Never missed a day. Never complained. He believed if he worked hard, everything would be okay. And then we took it away. You didn't just take his job. You took his purpose, his identity, his reason for living. Marcus leaned forward. Do you know what it's like to find your father's body hanging in the garage? Caroline's eyes filled with tears. No. I was 12 years old. I had just gotten home from school. I called for him, and he didn't answer. I found him in the garage, with a belt around his neck and a note in his pocket. What did the note say? It said, I'm sorry I failed you. Marcus's voice broke. He didn't fail me. Your family failed him. Your family decided that 300 jobs weren't worth saving, that the profit margin was more important than human lives. I was 17 when that decision was made. I know. You weren't responsible. Not directly. Marcus's eyes hardened. But you benefited. Every dollar in your trust fund has blood on it. Every privilege you've ever enjoyed came from decisions that destroyed people like my father. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to make you understand. Marcus pulled out his phone. I have enough information to destroy you, Caroline. The donor records, the clinic files. Enough evidence of Whitmore improprieties over the past 30 years to trigger a dozen SEC investigations. Why haven't you released it? Because that was never the point. Marcus set the phone down. I don't want to destroy you. I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to know what it's like to lose everything. You threatened my son. I would never hurt a child. Marcus's voice was fierce. I took that photo to show you I could reach him. To show you that no amount of money can protect the people you love. Then what do you want? I want you to acknowledge what your family did. I want a public apology. I want a foundation established in my father's name. I want the families of everyone who died because of that factory closure to be compensated. Caroline stared at him. That's it? That's it. Marcus's voice softened. I don't want your money, Caroline. I have plenty of my own. I don't want your company. I don't even want revenge anymore. I just want my father's death to mean something. And if I refuse? Then I release everything, and we both lose. Caroline was quiet for a long time. She thought about her father, who had made the decision to close that factory. She thought about her grandmother, who had built the family fortune on decisions just as ruthless. She thought about Lucas, who would inherit all of this someday. She thought about what kind of legacy she wanted to leave. "The foundation," she said slowly. "How much were you thinking?" $50 million to start, endowed permanently, focused on supporting families in communities affected by corporate decisions. "That's not enough." Marcus blinked. "What?" $50 million is a gesture. I want to actually help people." Caroline leaned forward. $200 million, a permanent endowment, scholarships, job training, mental health support. The Thomas Wright Foundation for Worker Dignity. Marcus stared at her. "You're serious?" "I am." Caroline's voice was steady. "My family made a decision 15 years ago that destroyed lives. I can't undo that. But I can make sure it never happens again. I can build something that honors your father's memory and helps people like him." "And the apology?" "Public, detailed, acknowledging exactly what we did and why it was wrong." "Your board will never approve this." "I am the board." Caroline smiled grimly. "That's what being the sole heir means. I answer to no one but myself." Marcus was silent for a long moment. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why would you agree to this?" "Because you're right," Caroline's voice cracked. "I've been so focused on my own pain, my own revenge against Derek, that I forgot there are people out there with real grievances against my family. People who lost more than I ever have." "Derek deserved what you did to him." "Maybe. But hurting him didn't make me feel better. It just made me feel like him." Caroline wiped her eyes. "I don't want to be that person, Marcus. I don't want to spend my life accumulating enemies and settling scores. I want to build something. I want Lucas to inherit a legacy he can be proud of." Marcus looked at her for a long time. "My father would have liked you," he said quietly. "I wish I could have met him. He would have told you that it's never too late to do the right thing. Is this the right thing?" "It's a start." Marcus extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" Caroline shook it. "We have a deal." The press conference happened 3 days later. Caroline stood at a podium in the Whitmore Tower lobby, facing a wall of cameras and reporters. 15 years ago," she began, "my family made a decision that prioritized profit over people. We closed a factory in Ohio without considering the human cost. 300 families lost their livelihoods. 3 people took their own lives." She paused. "Thomas Wright was one of them. He left behind a wife and a son. His son is here today." She gestured to Marcus, who stood at the side of the room. "I cannot undo what was done, but I can acknowledge it. I can apologize for it, and I can try to make amends." She announced the foundation, the $200 million, the programs that would help families across the country. The reporters went wild with questions. Caroline answered every one. That evening, she sat alone in her penthouse, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and pink. Her phone rang. "Mama!" "Lucas, baby, how are you? Are you having fun?" "James let me see a deer, a real deer. It ate from my hand." Caroline laughed through her tears. "That sounds amazing, sweetheart." "When are you coming?" "Soon, very soon. The bad stuff is over now." "Promise?" "I promise." She hung up and looked out at the city. So much had changed in the past week. Derek was facing federal charges. His lawsuit had collapsed when his lawyers discovered their funding source was under investigation. Victoria Price had destroyed all the files, as promised. Richard's company was being restructured under favorable terms. Marcus Stone had become an unlikely ally. His expertise in corporate intelligence was proving invaluable. And Caroline had learned something important. Power wasn't about crushing your enemies. It was about lifting up the people who had been crushed. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father in Zurich. Watched your press conference. Your grandmother would have called you a fool. I think she would have been wrong. Proud of you. Caroline smiled. She walked to the safe where she kept her most important documents. She pulled out the crumpled $10 bill. For a long moment, she stared at it. Then she walked to the fireplace and threw it in. The flames consumed it in seconds. Derek's final insult turned to ash. She watched the fire dance, thinking about everything she had gained and lost. A marriage built on lies. A revenge that felt hollow. A family legacy stained with decisions she couldn't defend, but also a son who was safe and loved. A foundation that would help thousands of families. An enemy who would become a friend. A future that belonged to her alone. The fire crackled and popped. Caroline Whitmore sat in the golden light of her penthouse, watching the last remnants of her old life burn away. She had spent 3 years pretending to be ordinary. She had spent 1 week learning what extraordinary actually meant. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about power. It was about choosing, every single day, to be the person you wanted your children to become. Derek Sullivan had thrown $10 at her face and thought he was being generous. She had turned that insult into a $200 million foundation that would change thousands of lives. That was the difference between them. That had always been the difference. Some people saw problems as excuses to give up. Caroline Whitmore saw them as opportunities to rise. She picked up her phone and dialed James. "Bring Lucas home," she said. "It's time to start our new life." And somewhere in a federal holding cell, Derek Sullivan stared at the ceiling and tried to understand how a woman he had called worthless had become the most powerful person he had ever known. He never did figure it out. Some lessons can only be learned by people willing to learn them. Derek Sullivan wasn't one of those people. But Caroline Whitmore was. And that made all the difference in the world.